Good evening, family. It is Monday. It is our MENcounter Monday, and I am so excited tonight for the last MENcounter Monday of our series. I can't believe it. July is over already. So we are here. My brothers are here. I'm so excited. Y'all probably remember Pastor Dorian from a couple weeks ago. Pastor Dorian, would you just say good evening to the people, and then would you introduce who our special guest is tonight?
Most certainly. I would just give a short, hey, praise the Lord, but I'll say hello to everyone. Good to see everybody again. Pastor Dorian here. I'm excited to be with my good friend, Pastor Denisha Bonner. Tonight, I'm excited to have, we have my partner in crime, my older brother. The people have been clamoring for Andre and I to go live. So we've been threatening. So we finally here. But this is my older brother, Andre, who I shared a bedroom with probably the first 16 years of my life. We lived together as adults before we got married. We also work in ministry together as well. He's a minister as well as an administrator at Lamb Christian Church. So, Dre, husband of one wife, father of 6 children. Dre, I don't know if there's anything else you want to share.
No, I'm just a regular guy, and I'm excited to be on as a regular guy. Pastor Dorian's brother, getting to know Sister Denisha, mad love and respect for both of them, a dynamic duo. I don't know how the people handle such grit and toughness in one space. I might be the most gentle of the bunch, and it ain't many rooms I go in, and my, and I may and I may be the most gentle of the three.
I don't know
and,
about that.
I don't, I don't need it. Depends upon the subject.
Yeah, well,
I was
well,
like,
I'm
we can
excited to
see.
I'm excited to bring just a different perspective to the conversation, and some excitement, generate some excitement surrounding the events that are soon to come. But again, I'm Andre Cass, Pastor Dorian's. I'm okay to be known as Pastor Dorian's brother and assistant in trying to make the vision of God that he's responsible for realized in the earth. That's my identity at this point. Yeah.
I love that so much. I am so excited. I have been excited all day. I am excited about this conversation. Now, when I heard you say that people have been clamoring to have you all go live, so I get to be the first time that y'all did it together.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is the
Oh,
first.
now this
Yeah.
is so good. I'm so excited. So let's get into it. But before we do, we want to make sure that everybody is with us. Ladies, if you're watching, get your husbands, your brothers, your cousins, um, brothers, let somebody know it is a great conversation that's happening. People are already in the comments saying they are looking forward to this. Me too, brother Chris. I'm looking forward to this. I love to be with my brothers. I'm so blessed to have some wonderful brothers. I think we're in the middle between you and Andre. So I got an older brother and a younger brother here, but I'm excited. So let's get into it. MENcounter is going to be in October, right? And our theme this year is the Kingsmen. And you guys specifically are going to be teaching together. So Pastor Dorian will be speaking on Friday night, but you guys will be teaching together, right? So let's talk about like your relationship, right? How has just being each other's brothers formed your lives? Like, what can you speak about just not only brotherhood as a communal thing, but like literally yourselves as brothers? Talk about that. Share a little bit with us about what we're going to see in the relationship.
So I'll go first. I was gonna let Dre go first on most of these tonight, but I'm gonna go first on this one, mainly because of how he introduced himself as he's Dorian Cass' brother. Um, I spent my whole life. I'm Andre Cass' brother. That's
Mm-hmm.
my that's a big part of my identity, and has always been and still is, for the record. Because growing up, again, I said Andre and I shared rooms, and as my older brother, Andre was the I don't know, all American kid. He was student council president, straight A student, captain of the basketball team. All the girls loved Dre. You know, all of the things.
He said,
We
"Don't
was
tell it all."
guilty. I didn't say what you did. I said what they did. But yeah, I was, and we were just a couple grades apart. I was always Andre Cass' brother, and a big part of that formation, for me, I'll say, is having a brother that was always so accomplished and always was excelling, that was never a part of our dynamic in our relationship, right? Like it never created competition, or it was never something that was even highlighted for him as his personal identity. We were always partners, and we always, even though he had so much going on in his life, I'll say this, he always knew me better than anybody else did. So having somebody that close that was always invested in actually knowing me, when I'm not a person that seeks to be known like that. So it was always extremely valuable for me. And to have someone that accomplished always gave me a very strong sense of personal identity that way. So it was always I don't even want to call it a challenge. It was a bar, because those are two different things, right? It wasn't like because he's doing these things, you have to do these things, but to have someone that has so much excellence in their life that close, it always set a great bar for me. And I'm 45 and I'm still Andre Cass, brother. As far as
Wow. So I can say, for me, there was 4 of us back to back to back. So Dorian and I are in the middle of an older brother and a younger brother. And I can say that probably one of the fundamentals of our brotherhood was proximity. You know what I mean? We were super, super close from the very beginning. So, and I think that's the wonderful thing about brotherhood in general, is it before the fundamentals or foundations of purposeful things, boys and men, a lot can be established simply based on proximity, which means I was a neat freak. Pastor Dorian, let's just say his shoes could be in different places and he was able to still find them and get dressed. You know what I mean? He was an avid reader, even as an elementary school student, and I would prefer to read a science and textbook. I worked hard and was a type A, overachiever, and Pastor Dorian was a natural. You know what I mean? The things that he did that were different than me, I watched him thrive with willing to put forth effort, but much less effort than me. And I think, had we not been so close, meaning separate room, we all 4 of us started in 1 bedroom together. Then we moved, and it was 2 and 2. So I think one of the things I can say is that from young days throughout up until we got married, we maintained a proximity where it demanded that you respect one another's differences. It demanded that you learn to coexist no matter the circumstance. And I guess, before we get into the real mature things of brotherhood, I think at base nature, brotherhood is can be formed simply by being demanded to be close. And I tell my nephews and my sons, you don't have a job to do anything more than remain stuck together and committed to being together. And Pastor Dorian, we've done that again, and we can go through all the stages from, doing things that we weren't supposed to do to sharing, the house together before we got married, and even in ministry now. So I think proximity would be something fundamental, I would say.
You want to respond to that, Pastor Dorian?
No, I don't want to respond. I don't want to
We
respond.
lean in like you have something to say. I love what you're saying so much, and I'm taking notes because we're gonna, riff a little bit here. You guys are both talking about proximity, and even Andre, what you were just about the demand to be close. I think part of the problem, you all tell me if you all see it differently. One of the challenges of our current days is disconnection, distance, and the dilemma that causes because we're not demanding of each other even to stay close, right? So some of this sounds like by virtue of how many bedrooms you all had to be close, but it also sounds like there became then a choice of staying close. Talk a little bit about that choice to stay close.
So let me say this. So the worst whooping I got in my life was me fighting my older brother, who
Okay.
we were even, believe it or not, even more different than Pastor Dorian and myself. So my dad didn't do a lot of verbal teaching, but it was demanded that we stay together. Yeah, I got in a fight in school, another situation, got in a fight in school, and again, I remember my brother having more of a conversation with my dad than me. I was like, when are you going to ask me what happened? You know what I mean? So I can say the proximity evolved, but it was a demand from our environment, from my dad, based on what he could have. We eventually moved into a house with multiple bedrooms. He could have split us up, put some of us in the basement. He didn't do that. Uh, it was part of the demand from him, and then based on our brotherhood, it was expected as we grew older, and it's even expected now. But I'll let Pastor Dorian chime in. No, I just wanted to mention my dad's kind of imprint from the beginning. But go ahead, though.
Sure. I think the other thing too is we were raised with such a and maybe this is an ineloquent way to put it, but such a high value placed on our values, the values that had been instilled in us. And one of the, I think, unfortunate things about the loss of community and people, even, there's so much convenience right now that if you're slightly inconvenienced, you can be alone, or you can be alone and still be entertained and still be at the party, right? You don't have to buy a ticket to the concert. Somebody that did buy a ticket will stream the concert so you can just watch it from your bed. I think I took my son to a Ty Tribbett concert, and it was a lady in front of us streaming the FaceTiming somebody at the concert, and the person she was on FaceTime with was literally under the covers watching the concert. I'm like, wait, that's not how this works. I was downtown trying to find a parking spot, doing all of the uncomfortable things to be in the room with everyone. And I endured all the discomfort to be in the room. In the bed does not create that same shared experience. And the power of our shared experiences, the power of our shared values, which we were taught to value highly, and we all had them the same. I can speak for myself. The idea of being with other people than my brothers didn't make sense because I knew they shared the values that I did, right? Like, and because those were important to me, it was like, why would I look for anybody else to be with? It would be lessening the potency of my values by doing so.
That is good right there. So, real quick, if you are watching and if you have some questions or some comments that you want us to address, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll try to make sure that we respond to what you are sending in the comments. Let people know this conversation is happening. It's too good to just enjoy it alone. So when you just said, Pastor Dorian, that you valued your relationship with your brother so much that even being with other people was a lessening of the values, as we think about men coming together, and we talked about this a little bit, or maybe in, I don't know, one of our side conversations, we talked about it. Talk about how well, let me ask this question first. How did you all challenge each other to be better men just inside of your relationships?
So my dad, Bishop Adolphus Cass, when we say my dad, that's what I'm referring to. My dad, he didn't say a lot of things that weren't connected to principle. So the things that were intense as far as our views, if they weren't connected to principle, we thought very little of them. So I think we were immersed in iron sharpened iron, because even when we disagreed, there was a fundamental perspective of a principle that we were arguing about. So, for example, whether we were doing a chore in the backyard, and maybe Pastor Dorian or Dorian's emphasis was compliance and obedience with my dad. Mine may have been efficiency and engineered sophistication, because my dad was a design engineer. So it was worldly principles of how physics and nature works, as well as spiritual principles that my dad was big on both. So we were young men and young boys trying to navigate an understanding of how those things work. And it made it easier because my dad wasn't big on our emotions or our feelings, but more so trying to use our words and expression to make sense of principles, which I think with young boys, there's nothing better to watch little young boys toil over his principles, even though there may be their feelings involved. It may be that, their view of the world or their insecurities. But I watch my sons. It's fun watching young boys navigate and fight for principle. And we were doing that. Yeah, we did that.
100%. I got to say this because, of course, I have a lot of memories of us being given the same job, but having different responses to it and having to work through our different perspectives for the same job. So that to me is the real importance of the shared community. Right now, what is so terrible, and as a pastor, trying to counsel people in conversation with just men in general, is because it's like they get to choose their own value system. Some, they cannot be shamed. And I don't want to go off down that path. They can't be shamed. So you can, but if you can't be shamed, you also can't have pride, and you can decide the things you care about. And it's hard to create real accountability when you can just decide your own rubric, the things you care about. And having brothers, we all had the exact same jobs we were given, the same principles we were given. So it was a standard by which we actually were fighting to meet, right? So I could say, what you were told, or what is good, and you don't get to move off that. Now, you could talk about how you want to get to it and where you want to prioritize it, but you don't just get to make up your own rules. And in our society right now, nothing is shared. Everybody thinks they can just make up their own rules, right? Which is one of the values of the body of Christ, which is one of the values of Christ as headship, is it sets the shared value system that we can hold each other accountable to. Now, the other thing I want to say about this, about being together and how we pushed each other to be men better. We fought, we argued, we debate, we do that for fun. But again, my dad wasn't, he's a bishop, he was a preacher, but he wasn't preachy to us. So very seldom were we preachy to each other. It wasn't that way. But I can speak for myself. One of the things that compelled me to be better is because when I was around my brothers, I saw what I was taught in action. I saw what it looked like. And when my brother was either, because my dad did instill in us a sense of maintaining our dress, our decorum in a certain space, how we behave, I saw what my values looked like in practice. And if my brother was the freshest person in the room, if he was the smartest person, he was the coolest, he was the most stand-up guy in the room, I saw what that looked like. Like, oh, that's what it looks like to live out our values. I want that. I should aspire to be more of that. So it was, I knew they had been given the same ones as me, and I could watch it play out in real life and compel me to either be that or an even better version of that if I could.
That's powerful. I'm going to get to a question that someone posed in the audience, but I just want to reiterate again. You said I saw what I was taught in action.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a powerful thing, especially when we think about the value and the importance of community. I won't get into it, but years ago, the Lord gave me a message called Watch Where You're Going, and the importance of having a model in front of you to even figure out how to do and become what you know you should be becoming and doing. So again, if you're wondering why you got to get the Convergence to 2026, is because you're going to be surrounded by people who are actually living out what you're ascribing or aspiring to live out. So a question in our listening audience is, how can you harmonize better with family who don't share the same values? What would you say to family members or people who are watching who want to know how to harmonize better with people who don't share the same values?
I would start by saying it's levels of harmony. Now so you got behavior, and then you have values. Those are two different levels of conversation. So I think the challenge with some of us that have intense values, and when we deal with other family members or close relationships that have different values, sometimes we find ourselves misbehaving in the name of our values.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as you get older, you find out that there's no excuse for that. And I think raising kids, watching them do that, it's really, you find out what that really looks like. When somebody's misrepresenting what you've taught them, you depart kids' values, and then you see them misrepresenting those values with bad behavior. So to me, I think with the things outside of the family of God, the family, your actual family that have those values, I think it's more important that you represent your family name, you represent the name of Christ properly amongst those with different values. To me, that's most important than trying to deal with the reality of having different values. I think that's what I know my dad taught us. That's we would be in school where we were in a suburban, predominantly white environment, of means, and then we would do ministry in more urban environments with more families with less, more brokenness, more violence, more uh, 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 a completely different situation. But we always were focused on, rather than putting our values on others, was demonstrating our values in our lives, so that whether we were in the suburbs or in the city with white, black, whatever, we always were the Cass family that modeled a particular value system and lifestyle. So I think, to me, it's more important that you really understand who you are, and it's more of a distraction to get into that. I value this, you value that. That's, to me, that's a little elementary. But Pastor Dorian probably be better equipped to answer that.
Now, all of that was spot on, the values versus behaviors, and values, behaviors, and preferences. A lot of people confuse their values with their preferences, and their siblings have different preferences. And that's why Andre referred to earlier that I was a compliance dude. I follow rules. I'm a rule follower. That's what I do. And Andre is going to find the best way to do it, even if it broke a particular rule on the way to getting to the same destiny. And we might have different preferences in that moment, but both of us wanted to ultimately get the job done. So it's also delineated between that. But and then getting older, I'm gonna be honest with you. And we went from sharing a room to he has 5 kids and a wife, or 6 kids and a wife. I have 5 kids and a wife. He has his own business. I got career, church. Like, you got to manage your expectations of your siblings too, as life phases change. That's a practical pastor piece. Like, he got his own house. I got mine. I don't need the same level of agreement that we had when we were sharing the bed.
Exactly.
That's good. So as we think about, and that you're talking about, how you raise your children, how you all were raised, let's transition this a little bit to thinking about our spiritual formation and how we are raised in Christ. Why do you all think God emphasizes sonship so much throughout the scripture?
I think personally, there's embedded in the word son is so much, and I think at face value, there's some benefit and privilege to sonship that is granted just by nature of sonship.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other end, I believe there's also some responsibility just by nature of sonship. So for me, I think it's an ideal term that, being a son myself and having sons, it's a unique situation where you have privileges that sometimes you don't deserve, you don't warrant, and sometimes you feel good about, sometimes you're embarrassed, sometimes your humility says, I know I don't deserve these privileges, but I have them. And then at the same time, there's the frustration of expectation or responsibility. I won't even say expectation. I think it's the actual responsibility that comes with sonship, that as well you have those dramatic emotions of, pride in those responsibilities, and other moments where it's like, I don't feel worthy. So I think that's an ideal relationship we have with God, where there's this responsibility and privilege that we vacillate and navigate, and it's a wonderful path to me, going from being a young son to an older son. I'm still a son at 47, and you navigate all these responsibilities and privileges while your emotions are vacillating. But that's what I would be my take on it, Pastor Dorian.
I agree wholeheartedly. The one different word in addition that I would use is sonship. Is there's no place of greater responsibility, but also greater safety, right? That the responsibility of a son, right? I think it's Galatians 4 said a son, as long as he is a child, is no different than a servant, though he be Lord of all. Like that's a safety as well as a crazy amount of responsibility that however big this is, however important this is, like this is you and you are going to be responsible for it. There's no higher degree of responsibility you can put on someone than saying, you, son, you are Lord of all. But there is no safer position than being a son, right? There's no safer position because you can't not be my son. You're right. You're not, because I could put a lot of responsibility on an employee, but there's danger in that. If you don't do a good job, you can get fired, right? You can get let go, you can get demoted. But son, there is no demotion, but there's still high responsibility. And safe and high responsibility, that's the perfect space of formation because you don't stray from responsibility, but you do it with safety. And I think that's why no better place than son or child for that matter.
And I would say that even Pastor Dorian sharing that perspective, that additional word, that's a perfect example of our differences of what we bring to the table. Because like what he just said is something that someone like me would need to be reminded. You know what I mean? Because there's some elements of sonship that the sooner a son understands the safety, that now you navigate the pressure properly. When against me, I'm feeling the responsibility or maybe vacillating between privilege and responsibility. Him just reminding me of that safety, like that literally epitomizes our relationship because I felt at ease even you saying that to know to emphasize that with my son as you put the responsibility on your own sons. And if you don't remind them of that safety, it only feels like pressure rather than, as he says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And that's a reminder. Again, I'm just in an honest moment, acknowledging Pastor Dorian's uniqueness in that area. I feel relief even in that moment now. Thank the Lord.
Oh, you said my yoke is easy. I said put them in B flat. All right.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, that's
church.
real.
Come on.
Yeah.
So as you all are speaking about your own sons and raising sons, I'm not gonna do it, but I still have feelings about that video with the lion slapping the baby son, and we're gonna get to that other question in just a moment. But
oh yes,
how are you all raising sons, right? Because you have been talking about being a son and having sons. How are you pouring into their formation, their becoming, instilling responsibility, like all of that? Talk a little bit about that. Cue us in a little bit about what that looks like for you all. Yeah, and Lewis said, let me find out Drake and hoop. And he said, put it in B flat.
oh Lord. Tell Lewis he don't want that static. He too nice.
Exactly.
He hoop like God. Somebody from Oberlin.
He don't want no static. He's talking about tuning up. Tuning up. Tuning up.
I thought he was talking about hooping as in basketball. Okay.
Tuning up. He said he heard it in the voice. The preacher came out. But how are you all raising your sons? How are you cultivating? Because I also see some mothers in the chat, and I know they're waiting, even though they don't know the question. I know they're going to benefit from that other question we're going to get to in just a moment. But what does that look like for you guys as fathers raising sons, being sons of a lion while raising lions?
Pastor Dorian, you want to go first on this one, or you want me to go?
I'll say something. Yeah. I'll say something brief. I think, and having, yeah, it did. Well, Lewis is always right there, waiting, seeking an occasion. But a couple of things. One of the benefits of having a great man as my father, there are many things about my childhood and my relationship with my father that I intentionally recreate with my sons. They are being raised in a very different context than I was in some respects, but there's other aspects of my life that I'm literally following the exact blueprint that my father and my mother, for that matter, laid for me. And as well as having a clear definition of what I want how my sons understand what we define a good man to be and what I expect of them, and all of our actions and everything that they do circles back to, are you displaying that and using this as an opportunity to become that whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's school, that never becomes the main thing, what you are developing into by virtue of your engagement in those things always stays the priority. And that's one danger I see a lot of people fall into, because we invest in a lot of things these days with our children in the name of being good parents. But that thing becomes the priority, not who they're becoming as a result of engaging in that. And that's a terrible, terrible message, that it doesn't matter how much time and effort and money we put in a thing. It is simply a tool or a means by which for us to reach this godly as well as healthy standard of malehood. So that's, for me, one of the things that I try to do with my sons.
I would say I do it both with my sons and my daughters. I think my tolerance for the learning curve for my boys is probably a lot different than my girls. But I would say one of the main things that I try to emphasize to them, my sons particularly, is a management of their desires and impulses. I think I'm kind of been on a tangent for a little while. I think has typically most things that I'm on are sparked by, in large part, by something Pastor Dorian has either uncovered or made me see clearly. And I think with my boys, the path to manhood is shorter and more reliable the more you understand your nature and your desires. I think boys, before they have strong sexual desires and urges, they have other things that are less intimidating. Even before they develop strong relationship with foods and their relationship with their their taste buds, they have other emotions that old school it was stop crying, or boys don't cry, get out of your feelings. And I'm not one of the new school people that have dismissed some of those boy tactics, because ultimately what they did old school, that I reiterate just in a different way, is trivializing or make less of a young man, a young boy's behavior in light of his desires. When you don't get your way, when you want something so bad, it makes you kick and scream, or it makes you have a bad attitude, or it knocks you off your square with your responsibilities. I think the sooner that you can emphasize that with your boys when they're younger, and all of your children, the girls is just a little different because society has a little bit more patience for a woman's desires. And if a man understands a woman's desires, then it's easier for him to manage the relationship with her. But society, nor women, nor brotherhood has a high regard for boys and mismanagement of their passions and desires. So for me, I use basketball, I use sports, I use boxing, I use their chores, I use how they deal with their sisters. And if it's the feelings and emotions are connected to what you want, what you desire, as opposed to a principle, as opposed to a particular outcome, then I'm gonna immediately deal with it. And I think that's something that I know now. I got my oldest son is 16. Now we're dealing with some other desires, some other elements, and he has some familiarity with how those feelings should be categorized in his his response to those things, in as far as his actions. But that's the short answer, Denisha. But we could really dig into that one of these days, because that's a real one there.
Yeah,
most men. Yeah,
that's a whole. And I was trying not to. I preached.
Do it.
Yesterday.
Do it.
But what Andre was talking about is, and I have to say and give him credit, because that is the space he deals in. I watch him with his children, right? And they work very closely together on lots of projects. His oldest boy, right, all over the country, one of the best basketball players in his age group in the country, and that still remains the topic of their conversations, how he is categorizing and managing his desires and his responses and his emotions in given moments, right? It's not just whether you made the shot, it's how are you managing your emotions and your desires. And I think watching that, and it's helped me even in conversations with my son, is when you're talking about your desires and understanding where they're coming from and how you master them, it helps you to have the right conversations about them. For instance, even when you talk about sex, the desire to have sex, if people are just talking outcomes and don't deal with the desire, you just say don't. as opposed to the real conversation is about being a sexually disciplined man. Not whether you do or you don't, because there's some men that don't just because they can't find nobody that'll let them.
Exactly.
Right. And when circumstances change, because they was a lane, let's talk brass tacks, because this is Sandra, so I talk like
yeah.
They were a lane when they were 16 and 17 and 18. So
yeah.
They didn't have sex. And they were a church boy shouting in church, looking down their nose at all of the guys that was having sex. They graduate college, get a couple dollars. Now some women will have sex with them, and they haven't learned to be sexually disciplined because that wasn't the conversation. And they're doing things at 30 that are ridiculous because they didn't do them and didn't understand themselves well at 16. So even when my son and I are having conversations, it's not just about do or don't. It's about who you are. And you feel like that, well, let's talk about what you're going to do with that so you are a sexually disciplined man. Because a man that doesn't have sex isn't necessarily a successful man. A sexually disciplined man, a one that understands his desires, know how to manage it, and respond to it appropriately, that's a successful man when it comes to his sexuality. So like watching my brother in high pressure moments with his son, direct the conversation to that, and it translates. It's just a very powerful thing.
When and Sister Tanisha, just to connect it again, and I don't, we've done these in the kitchen, in the living room, so we're not supposed to do this on live. So if we need to get back on track, feel free to interrupt. Over here a little bit. But I want to make sure. I want to make sure to make the point to connect the desires and the challenge of the desires back to what Minister Lewis was kind of talking about a little bit with discipline. And I was listening to him. You got the conversation and discourse around discipline. And, it's one of those kind of overused words, and people kind of have broken down where anything can be discipline. You know what I mean? You do some push-ups and sit-ups, and that could, if you do them consistent enough, but the objective for us with young boys is for them to understand responsibility and fulfillment in God. That's the objective. Because when you bring that stability to the world, where I'm satisfied, I'm content, I'm weak but strong.
Yes, sir.
I'm broke but rich.
Yes, sir.
I have no energy, but I'm whole. I'm dying, but I'm living forever. That's the revelation of understanding who we are in God. So manhood is epitomized by that fulfillment, so that a woman, when you come to join forces with a woman, the stability and anchoring force that you bring is contentment in God. Now, that is practiced through all these other premature disciplines as a young man until you found pure relationship and wholeness in God, so that when your tears are there, you're sad, but you understand the joy of salvation. It's all of these holes that we know what really filled us, that a female, a job, nothing will ever get the impression that your job is to fill this hole or void of humanity and fallen nature that we have. So the practice of managing those desires and emotions and vanity and things, because again, some of it is desire that comes within. Sometimes it's the external forces with young kids, boys and girls, of vanity. Again, but a vain woman, men love a vain woman because typically she's taking care of what she looked like. A man doing all that primping him, and who got a tolerance? I told a brother we were camping this weekend, and we were kind of talking about social media. I said, man, if you post so many pictures primping and I keep liking them, dog, we got a different type of relationship. You keep lining your beard up and getting dressed. It's only so many times I can like you primping as a man. But young boys, steering them towards a familiarity with being whole or even behaving whole when you are not feeling whole, to me, is where you get a man that's dangerous, seriously dangerous.
Yeah, this is about to turn into a whole new line. The overemphasis and production of vanity in men these days is one of the biggest banes on our society. Men and vanity don't go together. And right now, there is an overemphasis on vanity in men, that we got thugs spray painting their hair. What? Spray paint in your head and in your beard. I'm being honest. Gay men line their beard up like that. That was a sign of you were gay if your beard had that line. And now in every facet of men, vanity is being projected onto men, and a vain man is often a useless man, because you cannot do and function in men's priorities and do vanity at the same time. They don't work. I can't not get wet because my hairline will bleed and cover women on their way to the car. Like, both don't go together. I have to be okay getting wet if I'm gonna be the one to get out the car and change the tire. I can't do that if my whole beard and head is gonna rinse off. And I'm using that example to be funny, but also it's very, very patently on its face. I want my wife to say, I can't go out there, my hair, I just got my hair done. What if both of us can't go out there because we just got our hair done? But and in 2026, that's what it's like. And so and those desires, and they're preying on these desires that haven't been developed and dealt with in men by virtue of that. So it's just, I don't want to turn this to a whole new live because I'll start using words I shouldn't use.
So, okay. So I got a question here, right?
Yes.
Now, for context, Brother Andre, I sent Pastor Dorian this video, and it was a lion cub that like screamed. It might have been AI, I don't know, but it was cute. Lion cub screams in the middle of the night, and all the lionesses jump up and look around like, what's the danger? And the lion bops the little cub on his head, like, shut up. And I said, sons of a lion. Now, I ain't gonna hold you. I felt some kind of way when the daddy hit the little lion. He would let out another little yelp. And I said, I got to process how I feel about this. But I think more importantly, I can imagine, especially as I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat, there's a lot of women who are engaging with what we're saying here tonight. I hear you guys talking about a lot of wonderful things. And even someone might even say a negative of like, this is some toxic masculinity and all that kind of stuff, right? How can women get in the way and get out of the way when you're trying to raise a lion? What can we do that's helpful? Because again, it was interesting in the video, probably like 10 of the lionesses jumped up, like the baby cried, there's some danger. And the daddy was like, hush, boy. And I felt like one of them lion cubs, like, no, he ain't got to keep hitting him like that. Hit him.
So let me ask you a question. So was in this video, was there danger, or was this
don't
little?
See it.
Okay, so you know the progression of how lions, how that environment works.
Mm-hmm.
So the only threat, the threat to the older lion is a son or a nephew. Mm-hmm. You do know that until he's got to go.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that the mother or female is responsible for this protection.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, when that cub grows up, he either kills the father, mm-hmm, or the father got to go. Mm-hmm. Like that's like there's a progression there. So to answer your question again, Pastor Dorian, you feel free to jump in. I will say simply, I struggle with trying to instruct women. Pastor Dorian does a lot of counseling in very like nuanced and dynamic situations where, you know, he probably sees a lot of patterns, so he might have a different perspective. Mine, I want 100% mother and 100% father. That's me. I want 100% woman deposit and 100% man deposit for these kids, for mine, for everyone. All, you know, when you bring young people, I struggle to have women or men trying to be nuanced in what they're doing, and to allow the other person, male or female, to be optimal in what they're bringing. So for me, typically, is I say, whether it be in a coach's context, where it's a mother and a father with an athlete, or a friend trying to navigate he and his spouse, is you only overstep your bounds when you try to instruct them on what they're doing. Mm. I tell them, a mother, a grandmother, an auntie, be 100% to who you are and what you bring what you bring to that child, whether it be your own, whether it be the community. Bring 100%. If they need nurturing, if they need their wounds managed, if they need a hug, you do not have to do anything to alter your approach in the name of balancing out the male. The problem comes when you try to navigate and instruct him on what to do. Sometimes with men, doing nothing is the quickest way to results. Because sometimes when kids see reactions out of their dads, what again, not all women, because some women are better at this than men. Sometimes when kids see reactions, it elicits behavior, because sometimes some behavior is 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 reinforced by response. So sometimes a mother or an auntie or a grandmother, you should have. Why don't you? No, to me, let you do and bring 100% what you bring, and let me bring and be what I'm bringing. Sometimes it'll be nothing. Sometimes you'll feel the need. Sometimes I never, even with me and my wife, my son did something and she thought, and me and Pastor Dorian shared the same story, where the impression was that we were overreacting, or I was overreacting, and I was fine. I was behaving as if I was overreacting, so he knows what's important to me, when I would have rather been back in the bed sleep. So for me, I think the boundaries are when you try to dictate what the other person is actually doing, and it doesn't have wisdom, or it doesn't have other components. But I'll let you go ahead, Pastor Dorian.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think the headline is mothers 100% mothers, fathers 100% fathers is the ideal scenario in respecting each other's roles and those boundaries, because that's the headline. What Andre shared is the headline. The patterns that I do see regularly that undermine that, specifically the question was how women help and support. Two things. One of the long-term damages that happen is when women when they step over that boundary, it portrays a lack of respect for their husband, a lack of trust for him, right? And that begins echoing in so many other places and times in the household. And then when you want your husband to be able to step in and do those things, you have undermined him and showed the children he is not to be trusted. His emotions, his reactions, his response, his judgments are not to be trusted. Every time you overcorrect him and you come in and stop him from doing what it is he believes is best, you are undermining his respect and the trust the children have for him. So if you're gonna let him be 100% father, you gotta trust and respect that role that he's playing, which is always comes into play. If you already got a man and you don't respect or trust him, like, we got to have a whole other conversation, right? But for women that have not found a man to have children with, I tell them one of the most important things you have to have is a man that you admire. You admire him. You don't just like him. You're not just attracted to him. You admire his person. You admire his values. Therefore, you trust him instilling those into your children. The second thing, that though in those instances where you feel compelled to overstep, one thing though about that video, Dre, if you watched it, there's this thing that stands out to me that maybe didn't stand out to Pastor Denisha. Okay. It's a little lion cub, and he hollered, and it was real high pitched. He was like, ah. So I don't know who I heard say it yesterday, but I genuinely heard somebody say it to one of my nephews yesterday. Put some bass in that cry. And it might have been one of my sisters, I'm be honest, because the cast women ain't too much different than the cast men in many respects. Right. So it may have been one of my sisters said that to one of my nephews or my great nephew. Put some bass in your voice, right? You can cry, but put some bass in that cry. So that was the first thing I thought when I saw that video, is you can cry, but you're a lion. Put some bass. You got to sound like a lion even when you hurt. You have to sound like a lion even when you're scared. Put some bass in your voice. We don't sound like that, right? That was the first thing I heard. Why the lion slapped the cub was like, I don't care if you're scared, bro, but we always lions. That was the other part of that. And right now in 2026, what I see is parents parent for their feelings, not for their children. They parent for their feelings, not for their children. They believe they have parented well when they feel good, when they feel comfortable, when they feel peaceful. The long-term results of what they're doing on the child ain't really the priority. So just discern whether what you're doing is for how you're feeling versus what's actually good for the child. And one other real quick thing. For your sons and daughters, you have to parent for what you need them to be versus how you want them to feel in the moment. Like when you see things happening with your son, I'm trying to make him into something I want, not somebody I like where they are, right? I feel good about what's happening. So fathers often making them something that we can all use and that's useful for society. And it doesn't feel good to watch your son be made useful, but somebody got to do it.
I do want to say this. That I think I would say to my sisters, if they're open and genuinely asking what can be done. I think there's the father-son, father-daughter relationship is a unique relationship as a mother-son, mother-daughter relationship is. And I think there's nothing wrong with allowing your spouse or your child's parent, in this case, father, to father their children in the way that suits them. I think because at the end of the day, you'd rather an authentic relationship, whether it be silent or active, that's authentic. Because all of us come from different backgrounds, different raised with different approaches, whether it be generational, whether you were raised. My dad, as he say, the silent generation. We'd never. My dad is funny. I always laugh to myself when he talk about what they would never say back to their parents, and I'm thinking to myself, nobody was saying anything, much of anything, to each other, which is a whole nother conversation. But what I do know that we all can relate to is when you or your friend or your spouse has an authentic relationship with their parent, whether he was silent, whether he was demanding, whether he was absent even, but present. There's situations where you're wondering why she loves her dad so much and he ain't even around. You ever seen that? Those are always fascinating to me when you see a kid fixate on a parent that appears for us to be absent and you want to overcorrect. But I think there's something to say to the authenticity of a relationship rather than one that you try to manufacture as an outsider, whether it be a mother or whether it be an uncle, and you want to fix this person and you want them to change it, as opposed to some things you got to look and observe and say, let this thing play out. And you might end up with a different value system from a kid that says either he was silent when he could have got me, or he was pushing me, but it pushed me to who I am. You just never know how that's going to play out. And I believe you would. There's nothing wrong unless obviously there's overt abuse involved to allowing there to be the authentic piece, because me and Pastor Dorian is big on this about us having this new parenting style where you think active parent is always active rather than sometimes it's passive where you just sit back and observe. And I believe that for a spouse, it's healthy sometimes to just let those things play out, because sometimes men come back and apologize when we overdid it, or sometimes we realize that we on our own we should have been more active, and that coming to that realization is sometimes healthier than one that is beat over your head. So that's my answer to that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, something else, Pastor Dorian? You look like you're stewing.
You can't ask that to Andre and I. We have something else until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Facts. Exactly.
So of course I have something else. You have to just stop.
You're right. I mean, I'm just enjoying listening to this conversation all the time. One of the things that excite me about doing MENcounter is the reality of being able to hear, I would say, vital conversations from men. So as an aside, we used to do this thing back in Cincinnati, one of my ministry iterations, where we called it Can We Talk? And we would sit men on one side of the room and women on the other side of the room, and we would just talk. And I think there's values. Again, I know some of the ladies keep saying they want to be in the sessions where MENcounter is. And I know some of the men say, well, I got to go say some things to some of the women. So just sharing this space that we've had tonight is so exciting to me. It's very near and dear to my heart because I don't think we do enough talking. And we, as women, I think we're guilty of talking to each other about men instead of hearing from men about men. And I don't think uh, what I've been blessed to do is talk to a lot of men, and I'm like, sis, let me put you up on game from what I've learned. But I think this opportunity to just hear from you guys, and I'm so excited that we're going to get to hear again. The other thing, and Andre, I don't know if I told you this, but you are on the afternoon panel too, right? So we'll have more of this, even if you don't get to hear the session, ladies, at MENcounter. Men, you will get to hear Pastor Dorian and Minister Andre share together. But there's a panel, so if you didn't get your question answered tonight, we'll get to do that again when we get together in October. But I am so excited. Again, I could listen to y'all all day long. I could talk all day long. I've been really trying to just host tonight and not get too deep into the conversation. But before we go,
you got something else, Pastor Denisha?
Exactly. I had some questions, so I wanted to direct back to you.
Well, you can. I'm here for it. This is our juke joint. We can go as long as we want to. But I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have. But if you want to, if you don't, I was gonna say, what's the last word that you have for the people tonight?
Pastor Dorian, you want to go first? You can go second. I'll go first. I think when I listened to your previous conversations, there was some thoughtful responses. I think for the men, I think it would be wonderful if between now and MENcounter, if they found someone, if they don't have them already, that they can be honest with. I think friendship and I think honesty. We spend so much of our lives trying to do things that have very little value and most certainly don't promote honesty. Whether you're, whoever you are, whatever generation of man you are, I think it's valuable to find friendship that you can be honest with what's going on. That way you don't necessarily have to find honesty with strangers. That's being kind of grown and perpetuated, where men feel the need to get online and be honest, or even with their spouse in some instances where they feel that's the time to per se be honest, rather than friendship, whether it be a relationship, brotherhood, but somebody that you can be honest. I think if every man that's preemptively preparing for MENcounter would find a friend to be honest with, I think that would be what I would want them to have.
So, and I'm grateful to have that personally with my brother here. That's on the line. That's why we can talk. We could go to 3 o'clock in the morning with no problem if we needed to. When we lived together, we used to literally every single night we would find a subject and talk about it all night. And my wife thought we was crazy because, well, she was my girlfriend or fiance at the time, because we just could. And a part of that is because conversation that has 100% honesty and opinion and experience and ideas and thoughts is such a rich conversation, and very few people get to do that often. And that's why it's just, even if you don't come to some grand conclusion, just the exercise of having that kind of conversation is very healthy and helpful. The one thing that I would compel men and women who are on their way to MENcounter is foster a sense of curiosity. Now, I mean curiosity. I don't mean hungers, desires, needs. I mean curiosities. And most of us are not curious. We're needy. And those are two very, very different things. And being needy, even if you get those needs met, does not guarantee that met needs equal progress or equal growth or equal development. And people lead or come to places with just their needs as the interpreter and the framework of everything, and or their emotions and responses. I really would desire people to really foster a sense of curiosity. And for instance, and I do it intentionally and sometimes unintentional. I say sharp things and it is intended to create a reaction. And for people who are curious, it'll lead you in a good direction. For people who are just needy or aren't curious, it creates a judgment, right? So I say something about paint in men's hair. No, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can paint your hair on. And for the record, I'm 45. Ain't no paint. This your boy, just for the record. But but I say that, right? And you mentioned, it could be the toxicity only for the incurious.
Mm-hmm.
So many. Now I'm about to cause a little trouble, but hey, you know what the problem is? As many women have with men is they lack curiosity about men. They have things they want from men. They have things they need from men. They have ways they have been negatively impacted by men, but they have zero curiosity about men. Not genuine. They really don't care and don't want to know.
Facts.
They really don't. They want men to behave the way that they want. They want men to provide them. And I'm not just talking about monetarily. I mean relationally. They just want men to provide them the things that they want. They have zero curiosity about the inner lives of men, how and why men are the way that they are. I thought if women were even kind of curious about men, one thing would change every conversation about men. If women had to endure 1/10 of the rejection men have to endure over the course of our lives, they would judge men completely different. 1/10 of the rejection men deal with. I mean, from before you're married until you're married. How many times men have to get rejected before they get a single phone number, let alone a single date, let alone a single girlfriend, let alone a fiance, let alone a wife? How much rejection? Then the amount of rejection men get in marriage. If they were even curious, you wonder why some men are raving lunatics and angry. Women get told no one time and they blown the whole house up. Let a woman get told reject, but they're not curious about that experience. They mock the men that they turn down, and then say, I lied to him about my number. Well, he got told 13 times that night, and 10 of them took his drink. He paid for the drink, and then they told him no. You think that man, again, you got to be curious. I'm not saying the way a man should or shouldn't react to that, but you got to be curious about that experience to genuinely be able to interpret and understand man. So I would really, really encourage, and men, oh Lord, so incurious. You know what you want, but you're not curious about what it really is. You just want to have it, right? Curiosity will change everything and delineate between a need, a desire, and genuine curiosity will change so much. So I said a lot there, but I had to get.
You done got the chat fired back up. We were supposed to be.
I was gonna say, open up the comment section.
The comment section is on fire. The brothers is they
saying? I can't see
of something. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. The brothers is co-signing, and
they know I'm telling the truth. Women have so many opinions on men and no questions.
Mm-hmm. You get some women, they give me some hands up and stuff too. Hands up, don't shoot.
Okay.
We all right. But this is the kind of conversation I think that is life-changing. It is enhancing, and it is so vital, because what God wants, what kingdom should look like, what kingdom relationships should look like, what kingdom families, marriages, relationship, covenant, all of that should look like. And I'm so excited that I get to go on record and say I did it first. Y'all saw it here first. The Dre and Dorian show.
Yeah. and it's funny because he texted me earlier, just reminded this conversation. He said, what do you think? What does she want to, want Pastor Denisha to ask you about? I said, how about she could start with the LeBron to the Sixers? We can do this live to 3 a.m. on any subject matter. It don't have to be substantial or biblical.
Why didn't you remind me?
It could be world issues. It could be, we could do any subject matter, but you are indeed the first and not the last. So we determined to get it jumping.
I love this so much. I am so grateful first to you two for being here tonight. I'm grateful to those who have joined in and listened. I'm looking at some of the people and where they are. We people have joined in from all over the country, and I'm grateful to get to, for those who don't know you, but get to expose you to the world. Mr. Andre, Pastor Dorian, I'm forever a fan, forever a loyal sister and supporter of all things that you do. And I'm grateful that you would hop on this and do this with me, not only tonight, but what we're doing in October with MENcounter. I can't do a men's conference without some of the best men that I know being a part of it. So We've been having so much good conversation. I haven't said it a lot. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Go to denishabana.org/convergence and register today. You don't want to miss what God is going to do at MENcounter and at She Slays. Some of the things that you all have said tonight, I hope has whet your appetite for what's going to happen. Somebody said, when y'all see them sneaking in the sessions, this is going to be why. They're going to make sure that all the water is filled up and that y'all got pens and such like that. Just put them out. Tell them if Pastor Denisha didn't send you here, get out. But I'm so excited for what you guys are going to bring to this moment. To everybody who joined us tonight, I hope you were blessed and that you enjoyed what Minister Andre and Pastor Dorian have shared tonight. I love y'all deeply, and we will see you next Monday for She Slays Summer. The women got next. The women who are going to be presenting at She Slays are scheduled to start. We're going to have our She Slays Summer. We're not having a hot girl summer. We're not having a soft girl summer. We're having a summer where we're slaying and arising to be all that God has called us to be. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We love you, and we will see you next Monday for the start of She Slays Summer. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you, Sister Adisha. Take care, guys. Love y'all.